Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're going to dig into something really fascinating: ancient Indian education. And I'm talking about way beyond the usual stereotypes. We're going to uncover this incredible system of vast universities, super diverse curricula, and a philosophy that, believe it or not, is actually shaping policy right now. So let's kick things off with this question. Just take a second. When you think of ancient Indian education, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, I bet it's a very specific image, right? You see a teacher, a guru, sitting under a big tree with a handful of students, all deep in conversation. And that picture in your head? Well, that's the Gurukul. It's probably the most common starting point for this whole topic. These were basically residential learning centers where the students, the shishas, would actually live with their teacher. It was this totally immersive 24/7 kind of education. The whole thing was built on this really powerful principle called the Guru Shishya Parampara. See, the guru wasn't just some instructor who gave you lectures. They were a mentor, a moral guide, someone you had this deep, lifelong bond with. But here's the kicker. While this amazing, personalized mentorship was at the heart of it all, it was nowhere near the whole story. In fact, at the very same time, something else was going on, something on a completely different scale. So we're moving beyond the Gurukul now. You have to ask, was that it? Was ancient Indian education just a bunch of these small, cozy learning groups? Oh, not even close. The Gurukul was just one piece of a much, much bigger and honestly incredibly sophisticated puzzle. I mean, just look at this comparison. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. At the exact same time you have these small, intimate Gurukuls focusing on that one-on-one mentorship, you also have these massive, sprawling international universities. We're talking huge campuses that were absolute magnets for thinkers from all over the world. And here they are, the heavy hitters, the real titans of ancient learning: Takshashila, Nalanda, and Vikramshila. Now, these weren't your local community colleges. No way. These were legendary institutions, drawing in scholars from all across Asia. We're talking China, Korea, Persia, heck, even as far away as Greece. You could make a very strong case that these were the world's first great universities. Okay, so that brings us to the core of it all, the learning itself. What were people actually studying in these amazing places? I mean, what was on the syllabus, whether you were in a tiny Gurukul or wandering the massive halls of a place like Nalanda? Well, it all comes down to the curriculum. The main goal here wasn't just to cram your head full of facts, not at all. The entire philosophy was about holistic development. The whole point was to shape well-rounded people by balancing the spiritual, the ethical, and the practical, real-world skills you'd actually need. And what's really cool is that this holistic approach wasn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Depending on which university or tradition you were in, the focus could be totally different. You had the Vedic tradition, which was all about scriptures, philosophy, and ritual. Then there was the Buddhist tradition, really zeroing in on ethics and critical thinking. And later, the Islamic tradition brought this incredible focus on theology, law, and of course, the sciences. And listen, the range of subjects they covered, it was just breathtaking. I mean, we're talking advanced sciences, medicine like Ayurveda, astronomy, mathematics, the arts, literature, sculpture, painting. Then you have governance, law, military science, economics, philosophy, of course, and even super practical skills like agriculture and commerce. The system wasn't just designed to churn out a priest or a warrior. It was about creating a complete citizen. So what was the result of all this? Well, it produced some of the most brilliant minds in history. Absolute giants. You've got Chanakya, the political mastermind, Aryabhata, the mathematician, who helped give the world the concept of zero, and Charaka, one of the founding fathers of Ayurvedic medicine. These weren't just local heroes. Their work literally shaped our global understanding of the world. But, and this is a really important but, we have to be careful not to romanticize this whole period. As brilliant as the system was, it had some major, major flaws. It was definitely not a golden age for everybody. And that brings us to the big problem: social stratification. Here's the catch, right? All of this incredible knowledge, all these amazing institutions, access to them was a privilege, not a right. And that access was heavily, heavily restricted by the social structures of the time. You see, these flaws created some really deep inequalities. For one thing, formal education was pretty much off limits if you weren't from an upper caste. So a huge chunk of the population was just left out.
Access for women? Also incredibly limited, with only a few rare exceptions. On top of that, there was no standardization. The quality of education you got could be amazing in one place and not so great in another. And finally, these amazing universities were fragile. They relied on rich patrons to survive and were, tragically, very vulnerable to being destroyed during invasions.
Okay, so now for the modern connection. This is where the story gets really interesting. Because despite all those historical problems, the core ideas of this ancient system, the best parts of it, are actually making a huge comeback today. And how is that happening? Well, it's being driven by India's National Education Policy of 2020. This is a massive reform, a total overhaul of the country's entire educational system. And guess where it's looking for inspiration? You got it, directly to the past. And I mean, just look at this. The parallels are just undeniable. Those core principles from thousands of years ago, that idea of holistic development, of a multidisciplinary curriculum, of learning by doing, and of focusing on critical thinking, these aren't just historical footnotes. They are the central pillars of India's vision for education in the 21st century. It's an incredible echo from the past. So that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? If the wisdom from an ancient education system is helping us tackle the huge challenges of modern policy today, well, it really makes you wonder, what other blueprints for a better future are just sitting there in our past waiting for us to rediscover them?